As new business, Ken, would you
Sure.
introduce our guest speakers?
Sure. Well, recently, the Florida Studio Theater has developed a new project for downtown. It's a very complicated project. And so we've invited them to come today and describe the project for us and perhaps answer some questions that we might have about it. And the lead is Richard Hopkins, who is the producing artistic director of Florida Studio Theater. He's been there since 1980.
That's it.
That's correct. The roots of the theater go back to 1973, however. And under his tutelage, as you've seen, particularly in the last few years, the theater has grown substantially. So, and with on Richard's left is Patrick-Mulva. Patrick is the lead donor on the project, and the project's going to bear his name, right? Is that correct?
It is.
And Patrick is the retired vice president and controller of ExxonMobil Corporation. Then we have Alan Anderson, who is the architect of record for the project, and Joel Freedman, the best land planner in the state of Florida.
How much do I need?
Okay, so Richard, would you like to take it away?
Let me open up. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving us time to talk to you today about this. We've been working on this project for several years. First of all, why did we even start it? The first driver was parking. We noticed that we were having real parking problems in downtown Sarasota, and we said, well, if the city's not going to build more parking, we need to. And this is before they built Palm Avenue, and even after Palm Avenue Garage, we still need more parking. Because on big heavy dates, when they do a big fair or arts fair or something downtown, it's very disruptive to our subscriber base. And our audiences are coming in, they're used to parking in certain places, and all those places are gone, and there are tents set up, et cetera, et cetera. So we need more parking. While we were looking at that, we also said, well, we also need better housing for our visiting artists. We own 18 properties around downtown Sarasota, houses where we house actors, directors, designers when they come in to work for us. They come in mostly from New York, Chicago, and some of the big cities. But those houses are all scattered all over downtown Sarasota and in states of disrepair. So we did an analysis, can we renovate them, et cetera, and said, no, best thing to do is start from scratch and sell these properties. They've got good value right now, especially. So parking, housing for our artists. And as we did that, we said, oh, we're running out of seats in our cabaret theater program. So while we're at it, we should build another cabaret. It's not that we're ambitious, it's just that we have needs and our audience has needs. So what we came up with, and we've been working with Alan Anderson on this for a number of years. And this gives you an idea. Can you see it over there? I want to make sure these guys can see it. Are you okay over there?
Zoom folks, can you see this?
I can see it. We're okay.
All right, thank you.
So what we've got
I can see
here,
it.
this is being amended actually, because we were seeing an 11-story building here. It's dropping back to a 10-story building. Anyway, we have 2 floors. Well, let me be clear. This is the existing Gumpert's Theater that we built an annex to 8 years ago. All right. And the first 2 floors of the proposed project are theaters and spaces that house those theaters. And then the next 4 floors on this are parking, right? All acts, go ahead.
3 floors.
Yeah, we're cutting it back to 3, but they're looking at a picture that has 4.
Oh, yeah, that's
We're cutting it back to 3, right? That's why it's gonna go from 11 to 10. So this picture you're looking at has 4 floors. We're cutting it back to 3. Access from the rear, from the alley. So you cut off of either 41 or you'll cut off of Coconut, come down the alley, take that and drive into this. The original proposal had 178 parking spaces. This one has about 138 parking spaces, which is a nice boost for us. Then on top of that, we have 5 floors of housing for our artists. And while we were at it, what we were noticing was that everybody who works for Florida Studio Theater does not live in Sarasota. They don't even live in Sarasota County. They live in Manatee, or well, some live down in Port Charlotte, right? They can't afford to live here. So what we're also incorporating into this is workforce housing, affordable housing, that what you're looking at will be 50 hotel rooms for all of our visiting artists and another 40 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment units rented under market value to artists and arts workers who live here in Sarasota full-time, year-round, fulfilling that need of letting real working people and artists and arts workers live downtown. And the beauty of that is, instead of having those 18 houses that we presently operate, we'll be able to condense all of that, have all of it right here, eliminate a fleet of 12 cars that we have to provide to those actors, bring it down to 2 cars because they can all live right here, walk to shopping, walk to the grocery store, walk to work, and not have, we eliminate 10 parking spaces immediately. So that's it in a nutshell, all right? And I'll turn it over to Alan and let him add to this. You ready, Alan?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to touch on a few things that was shared to me question wise.
I meant to turn it over to Pat. No, I want to Pat speak. So that was my mistake.
No.
Right, I want to turn it over to Pat, all our board member and major donor. Sorry.
No, you're good. That's it.
I know you want to hear Alan and Joel and questions. What I want to talk about is why. Why are we doing this? As a member of the board, I think I can adequately represent our board members, and then personally. What you heard Richard describe very quickly in detail is what we've all kind of just, it is a holistic approach to what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, the biggest fear that I have as a board member and someone involved in this is people are going to look at this and say, oh, they just add a bunch of seats in theater and it's a theater. They got to sell more tickets. Well, there's so much more to this. And when I say holistic, think about it. Richard just quickly ran through it. We got to house over a season like 250 to 300 actors. We got to house those people. The housing that Richard described, it's okay. It's old. It needs maintenance. Are we going to struggle to continue to attract the top talent that people have come to expect from Florida Studio Theater? Maybe, maybe not. This will answer that question. Affordable housing. And I think Richard quickly mentioned, but I want to go back. This isn't just for Florida Studio Theater. This is opened up to any artists, so that we're not trying to draw a big fence around Florida Studio Theater and say nobody can come in here. That's not the case. Will Florida Studio Theater people be there? Hope so. Hope so. So affordable housing, which again, we all know. So important. One of the other things that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but I really want to mention it is we have such a big program for kids. And this could give us opportunity to have a lot of space for these kids to grow summertime during the year. And also from a safety standpoint, not that they're not safe today, but we can centralize that work and provide even more opportunities for these kids. And I got to tell you, a lot of the kids that come to Florida Studio Theater are on scholarships.
Yeah.
We cover the cost. The citizens of Sarasota, cover for a lot of kids that can't afford to come to something like that.
About 30%.
About 30, yeah, thanks, Richard, about 30%. So then you kind of step back and you say, you know, you could quickly say, well, the board wants to sell more seats. Well, the good news is most of the time we're pretty much sold out, right, Richard?
Yeah.
But there's also another key here, why we want more seats. Well, yeah, we want more people to enjoy the arts in Sarasota. But one of the tenets, and when I joined the board, Richard and Rebecca, Richard brought this home to me, and he brings it home to the board all the time, at affordable prices. I'm not trying to run an advertising campaign. Look at the ticket prices at Florida Studio Theater. And that's so anybody in Sarasota surrounding area can afford to come to the theater. Now, I'm not trying to take on the competition here. I'll just challenge you. Look at our ticket prices. Look everywhere else. And you can afford to come to Florida. And the people that can't, we'll get them in the theater one way or the other, right?
Right.
Right. That's what's really, and so when I step back and look at this thing, yeah, we want more people coming to Florida Studio Theater. Florida Studio Theater brings in something like 300, and you know, I live in a condo downtown too, and I can say, oh no, when I say this number, we bring in 300,000 people over a season into Sarasota to enjoy the arts. So you're going to get it bigger and there's going to be more people. Well, I know as condo owners, you might say, I'm not sure we need more people, but it's the growth. It's the engine of the city. It's what Sarasota is about. And so when I look at this, it's like, wow, wow, help some kids, affordable housing, bringing in actors. You know, it's just so much more. And that's, to me, the message that I want to leave you with when you think about this and you think about how it is going to inconvenience people. We're going to bust everything we can to not inconvenience, but you're going to have more people downtown. That's a good thing. We really think that's a good thing. I have to tell you just one really quick story because I want these guys to have plenty of time. When Richard and Rebecca first sat down with Mary and I and talked about this building, I'll never forget this as long as I've been. Here is the artistic director, the person, the brains and the heart and soul behind Florida Studio Theater. And Richard starts to explain a parking lot problem. And I looked at him and I said, Richard, did you ever think in your career of directing and involved in the arts, you know so much about parking? And he kind of said, well, you got to know about that. And I was sold because that's the approach for us. They know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. And so I'm going to turn it over to the experts. But if I left you with any message from the board and myself personally, this is something Sarasota needs. This is something that addresses a lot of different agendas in the city. And yeah, it brings more people to Florida Studio Theater. So we can't really ask for any more. So we're always looking for people to have good things to say about Florida Studio Theater and about this project. So I think that's everything I've got to say. And now I'll turn it over to Al.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you. Now it's your turn, Alan.
Well, I'll just hit on Richard kind of went over the project a little bit. I'll hit on
So they can see on the screen there too.
closer here.
Here's the chair.
I'll go over a little bit of more detail of the things in here. I know there's been some questions there. I'll touch a little bit on some of those questions, try to answer those, but obviously here to answer some of those questions just in case I don't hit them all. Have been fortunate to be involved with Florida Studio Theater since about 2009, 2010. Worked on the renovation of the Gomperts and the addition at the corner there. So I was involved with them at that. And actually, when we talked about, we've been working on this for a while, somewhere around 2016, I think we started kicking the tires. That started about housing because they were trying to consolidate their housing needs. And so we've kind of gone back and forth, kicked the tires, the needs and stuff. But then the reality of the parking issue really is what kind of got us having to say, wait a minute, we've got to look at, because when we look at this lot, the lot is that we're working on, that this is on, it's about 105 deep by 200 feet long. So it's about 21,000 square feet. So in the city codes, you got to remember, allow you to do certain things. And the code allows you to do certain things. So you kind of have to take advantage of that and do what the code says you can do on those things. And so we began looking at this and how do you use this property, how you develop it and stuff. So there are the theaters on the ground floor, and then there's the parking levels and the housing. All of that, the parking that we have is all dictated by what the code says that we have to do to calculate it. And the first floor, which is about it's about 15,000 square feet roughly when you take the ground floor minus the ramps, minus the 2 stories of the cabarets and the spaces, because the volume, it's 2 stories, but there's a lot of open space. If you've been into the current theater, when you go in there, there's a lot of similarities. We're trying to match and create the same spaces that they've experienced at the other theaters and such. So it's a lot of duplication and similarities of that because we like to create familiarity with the patrons and stuff in the space. So all of that space and all of that theater space has calculations built into that for the parking requirements based upon what the city zoning dictates and tells us to calculate. Then you go up to the residential sides of it. The apartments are required to provide certain required parkings for those spaces, for each of those. And then the hotel also generates a requirement on the parking. So all of our parking requirements were generated based upon what the city told us we had to do. And we tried to steal a few more. And I say steal a few more, again, the goal was to fulfill as much parking as we could possibly get, knowing that they have the need. And stuff. So that's kind of what is generating here. But you've got there's several entrances along the front that go into the different cabarets and as well as the different theaters. I think there was mentioned a question about the base flood elevation and where are we? As one of the questions, our main theater and the main floor is at above base flood elevation or at base flood elevation requirements. A portion of one of the theater is below base flood elevation because of the ramp and the height requirements that we need to accomplish to get that, but that will require flood proofing. So, and meet those standards and requirements. So there's all requirements that are out there that make us have to do certain things. So when you look around town of things that are being built, those things are being done based upon what the code says we have to do and stuff. And when you're below base flood elevation, it's either an unoccupied space or it is flood proof is what they call it. So then the parking, again, the parking layout, originally there was discussion about trying to have the 11th floor. That came about, just so you know, by the city has in their code book and zoning books to allow you to provide parking to the city based on certain criteria. And it's a matter of coming to agreement as to what that the criteria is. We got to the point where it was spending too much money on a parking floor that we couldn't have control over. So that's why we're kind of going down the path of going back to the 10th floor. What that does for us is that puts us all in conformance. We are everything we have and that what we're proposing is conforming with the exception of some signage and a few elements on the building, but our core structure and such, really by going back down to 3 floors, it actually puts us in complete compliance with the city codes. And also, again, a few signage things that we're trying to get a little bit of relief on because they like to be seen. We like to know,
It's a theater.
it's a theater, right? And the theater that we look at when we think about is New York City. You look at New York City, you go down through there, you see the theater districts, and it's vibrant. Go down there now on an afternoon, showtime, and hey, listen, you may show up at one time and it seems kind of quiet, but come back out in an hour or so. I've gone down there early for a show for a cabaret, and I think, wow, it seems kind of quiet. Boy, you come out at 8 o'clock, and man, there's more people down there in that area. And sometimes people are looking for parking. If you don't know where to go to park, sometimes it can be a challenge. But there is no, they offer quite the deal too. When they talk about that, when I experienced that, getting involved with them, it made me go out and go to the theater a little bit more. And boy, I sure do enjoy it. It's one of the things that I have to say thoroughly. So with that, I'll open it up, and I don't know if there's anything else I need to mention, but happy to answer any questions.
Joel gets to
Well,
say
maybe,
anything.
let me just talk, because you guys be getting notices about certain things.
Right.
We're under what's called the administrative review process for the site plan. However, we have to, oh, sure, I'm sorry. Yep. Yeah, okay, you're great. And even though we're within the code requirements, as Alan mentioned, there are a few what's called adjustments that we have to request. The city staff can request up to a certain level, and then after that, we have to go to the planning board. So you probably will be getting notice about a planning board public hearing requesting for some adjustments. Now, what are these adjustments? Number one is going to be where we're locating this parking. Because we have, again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, we're bounded by 2 primary streets, it's called. I always say the P stands for pedestrian. You're not allowed to put parking up close to your property line. You're supposed to set it back at least 20 feet. Well, if we do that, forget parking. It just won't work. As Alan mentioned, the lot's only 105 feet deep. But we can ask for an adjustment because we do have these 2 primary streets to bring the parking out to the property line, provided we screen it and all that. That's why you can't really tell that's parking. So that'll be an adjustment with the planning board that we're going to have to request. I'm not sure. I think now that we've removed the issue with the 4th level parking, the only other adjustment you'll see is related to the signage. So we're going to try to have one public hearing for both adjustments. Other than that, there are some issues with regard to access, how we're going to get into the alley. Hopefully, with all of your support, we can get a little cut in one of the medians in Coconut so that people can turn left. If you're heading north on Coconut, turn left into the alley instead of having to do one of the wonderful U-turns we're all learning how to do. Other than that, this is a great project, I think, and now it's done an awesome job.
Just real quickly for folks, this faces Coconut, is that correct? Between which streets?
This is First Street.
Face first,
Face first.
which side is Coconut?
Then the existing theater wraps around Coconut. So we'll be what's called consolidating all the property.
This space right here is Coconut. This is the side that goes to Coconut.
This is the existing theater. From the city's zoning point of view, we're gonna have one big lot though. And that's why.
Can you talk a little bit about the apartments and the hotel rooms and all? I mean, are 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom?
Sure, the way they're set up are they're 2 bedrooms with a common living area in the space. Each of those bedrooms have a bathroom, private bathroom. There's a kitchen area. They're about 1,100 square feet, I believe it was. We've kind of tightened them up in order to get our numbers right and stuff, but for the most part, when you look at other housing and stuff that's out there, I hear 2 bedrooms at 800 square feet and 900 square feet. I believe these are right around 11 to 1,200 square feet is what we're at. But there's a kitchen area, there's a dining area, there's a living room area, but then the bedrooms are roughly 10 by 12, 10 by 14. Square feet and stuff with balconies, these balconies that will look out over onto First Street as well.
So so actors will be living there permanently?
Well, the apartments are for the affordable artist housing to offer local people that live here. The 50-unit hotel, those are all 1 bedroom or 1 room efficiencies. What you have is you have a kitchenette, you then have a sitting area, and then you have a bedroom. If you think about it, kind of your standard hotel that you go into your hotel, the ones that have, some of them have a long kitchenette, and then you'll have the bathroom on the one side, and then you'll go in and there'll be 2 king size or queen size beds there. What we've done is taken the location of where our second bed would be and created that into a sitting area. So those people have their own space to go in and sit down, sit in a living room area and relax and live in as though they were living in an apartment.
So these are actors who'll be here for a couple of weeks or?
Yeah, I think 3 months or a month. Yeah.
Actors in the main stage are here typically for 12 weeks. So you've got 3 weeks of rehearsal, 8 or 9 weeks of the run of the show. So that's about 12 weeks. Our cabaret artists are here much longer. Those shows run 18 weeks. So that's almost a half a year.
So who's going to be in the hotel and who's going to be in the?
Visiting artists are in the hotel,
Okay.
and the affordable housing are
Permanent.
actors, directors, designers, opera people, symphony people, people who play guitar at the Gator Club, etc. Artists are bona fide artists and will meet a certain income line with us. We haven't finished all of this, but they're gonna have to meet a certain income line and be in need. In other words, if they're making $300,000 a year, they don't fit that need, right? They have to meet a certain income level, and then they can get affordable housing from us.
And one of the things, let's say, like you said, the season is also hotel rooms that aren't available, Florida Studio would be able to rent them out just like a normal hotel.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, and I think what you're doing here is very commendable, and I mean, all the power to you. What is your timeline on this? What is that? And also, as far as the other theater, I mean, there's so much charm there. What will happen with what?
We don't expect anything to go away.
Okay, so nothing is going to go away. This is just going to be an add-on to that. And then what is your timeline? When you?
With the grace of God, we hope to break ground in March or April
Okay.
of 23.
And then with a completion.
Takes about 24 months
Okay.
to complete it, but we hope to move in phases to recognize the huge inconvenience on our audience
Yes.
for 2 seasons. 18 months minimum to get that core and the garage built. So we want to get in there and open that garage as soon as we can to get our audience back into that, because we're building this on a lot that presently parks about 40, 45 people, 40, 45 cars a night. So we've got to get that reopened and get it back to the 140 it's going to be serving, so we can start solving some of those parking problems. That's our first priority. Then we'll open the housing, and then we'll start opening the theaters, and we'll phase those theaters usually about 6 months apart. I tell people that opening a theater is like buying a new piano. You have to tune it. And you have to get.
Yeah, as an example of that, when we did the renovation of the Gompers and stuff, we actually got that to a certain stage. We actually opened up the Gompers for a quick show for a period of time. They continued, that show ran for a little bit. We continued to do some completing the lobby. Then we began on the cabaret. We started getting the cabaret going while the Gompers was actually up and running and shows were going. And then came the back theater, where they do the improvs and stuff.
Yeah, so we phase all of that. We do what we call a soft opening, open it for as short a run as possible, find out what's not working, close it down, put audiences in other theaters, and go back in and fix all of those problems that we've identified with real life human beings walking in, sitting down, checking the acoustics, checking the lighting angles and all of that stuff.
So in the end, how many theaters?
8.
Theater.
With a total seating capacity of a little less than the existing Sarasota Opera, because our theaters are all very small and we stagger those openings. Now, one of those theaters will be dedicated strictly to children's theater, to Keating, and because that program is growing. And it's our hope that that will continue to grow and that we can get that subscriber base. Because if you live in a neighborhood, you see the buses pulling up all day, every day.
One question about the right-of-way treatment, sidewalk widths, amenity strip. What are your plans along First?
Along First Street, actually, what we have there now is what we're going to be maintaining. What you've got there is landscape areas that the city has brought out. They've also cut back areas in for loading areas and then some parking area. So as we look at, if you look at what you've got there, the part of the front will pretty much remain as it is. And then as we come along here, there's parking spaces in front of that they will maintain. But then also we're going to extend that parking across the front, potentially loading. We haven't kind of determined that because we got the entrance to the other theater here. So, but it'll be very similar to what is there. And what we're also looking at is what the landscaping is there. And the question there, whether they're palm trees or whether there are other similar trees that they have downtown, the saying goes, the right tree in the right location. We don't want to put it, we'd love to put some big oaks there, but big oaks aren't going to be the right tree for that. So really we'll have to look at it aesthetically, what's going to meet the city requirements, but then also put the right landscaping there.
Yeah, let me add to that, because what audiences really love at intermission, pre-show and post-show is to be able to come back out into the fresh air. And it's a luxurious sidewalk right now as existing with a minimum 10 feet of width on those sidewalks.
Yeah, I'm not able to immediately picture it, but I mean, DSCA has been a strong advocate of canopy trees. The city's green space policy calls for canopy trees when appropriate. So particularly.
And we'll look at that as an option. We've got one of the better landscape architects, Phil Smith, who's done a lot of work down through the downtown and some of the plans that are out there. So.
Yeah, I think the one comment, and I think I would speak for the board in our green space committee, that we would certainly encourage you to do everything possible for the canopy trees.
Looking at some of those,
there's a real opportunity there.
Absolutely.
Can I bring up the F word and the C word? C word cost F for financing? Is Pat going to carry the whole thing? Or do you have an estimated?
That I would have to turn over to, well, that's where we're working at right now, is we're working at what the costs are. Obviously, when we began this project, we were at one realm of budgeting. But as we've seen the cost escalation of things, that's what we're trying to work through, the details of what the final costs of those are.
Let me be very transparent on that. When we started this project, we could build it for $28 million, right? we have $20 million pledged right now, and we know we can sell our other existing property for at least $8 million. So we're okay on that. The problem is it has almost doubled since we started this. So in fact, that occurred just over the pandemic period. So that's the problem we're wrestling with right now. It's not like the prices are creeping up. The prices leapt up.
Yeah, they just overnight.
And so it's been pretty brutal, and we're dealing with that and saying, well, hey, can we raise 50 million? And it may be more than that. It may be less than that. If we turn the corner and find out, we're going to know more about it. So that's not the happy part of this picture today. That's a real danger, and there's a lot of clouds on the horizon for us there. But we've got a great community, and we've got good fundraising skills, a good staff, a great board of directors, and we're going to wrestle it to the ground and get it fixed.
Would this qualify for any TIF tax incremental funding?
I've got two questions.
Okay, Ken, go for it, and then I think we better
All right,
wrap
I
it
have
up.
two questions, one for Joel and one for Richard. Joel, I believe there's split zoning in this block. Does it affect this project?
No, it's just to the west.
Okay. Richard, can you speak to how this compares to the kind of housing that's available to artists in other communities? Is this unique to Sarasota? Is it a leading edge kind of effort to house
Actually,
traveling artists?
a little bit of both. This idea is being picked up by a few other people, especially in the larger cities in Chicago and in New York. We based our housing idea of affordable housing. Now, let me back. Okay, you got the hotel. That's not a new idea, but it is a new idea of setting it up as a hotel. Many theaters build buildings and put apartments in them and put actors in there. We decided to run it as a hotel so that we could have individual rooms, which is what our actors asked for, individual kitchenettes, so they can live alone. The advantage to us is that when that person moves out, we can rent it. So that becomes an income driver for us right now. That's a plus. If we were to operate that today, if we had it today, we would be at 51% capacity year round on average, but there are obvious peaks at the winter and so forth. Right. So that's the hotel. On the affordable housing, we based the affordable housing idea on Manhattan Plaza in New York City, which if you're an artist, you would know about it because there are two grand towers between 42nd and 43rd, 8th and 9th Avenue, two 40-story towers that were going to be luxury buildings and went belly up. City went in, bought them. Anyway, long story short, it's for artists, period. Affordable housing for artists and some of the people who were moved out of that neighborhood when they built this. And you've got artists living there with great views of the river. And that's the only place in New York City today that an artist can live.
But is there anything like it in a city of our size?
No, there's nothing like it. This is going to be really unique to Sarasota.
Makes us proud.
Sure.
It's gonna be great.
Okay, just one last question, and we got to move on. We certainly enjoyed this, but Peter, you have one question?
Yeah, with opportunity of a hotel and so forth, and first floor, is there any commercial space, coffee bar, little breakfast shop, for hotel residents, off the public?
I hope not, because we manage enough. We've actually looked at, we're gonna have a little restaurant in the front, but in order to meet the tax codes, we can only operate that restaurant for our patrons. Otherwise, we get into, we become a for-profit, and we're not for profit.
So you're operating only as a not-for-profit, you don't have an umbrella for unrelated business income, capital, so you just have that one corporation?
That's right.
You may want to think about an umbrella later.
We've explored that pretty thoroughly with our tax attorney. Yeah.
Okay, and there is just one.
Great project, but I had asked the survey, so we'll get on tape here. During the 2-year construction, will sidewalks on First and Coconut all stay open with scaffolding?
The sidewalk, I would say on the north side, the place where we're working, probably will not stay open. Hopefully there will be enough passage for our audience. We're the ones that are going to be inconvenienced by it because that's our audience there. On the south side, no problem. But on the north side, when they're building there, my assumption is that part of it will be blocked a little bit. Although from what I've heard from the contractor, they're expecting to put the crane in where the elevators will go. And that won't then infringe on that area, which is great, but I'm not hopeful.
Well, some of the other ones downtown are blocking sidewalks so they can put their cranes and their storage
Oh, I know,
on the public realm.
I know.
And
I know.
we appreciate it if, because of the.
We're gonna try to stay out of your way because it inconveniences all of our audience as soon as we start getting on that sidewalk. We bear the brunt of that. There's no other business on that side of the sidewalk.
Well, and keep in mind also that when we talk about 24 months of construction, we will be going vertical for 24 months. That's the good thing about it. And so you can start minimizing and pulling back some of those disruptions to a certain amount. Because as they're going up, if you've noticed some of the ones out there, as they're going up, they're starting to fill in the blanks. They don't just go vertically and then start over again. They're basically building things and closing the building. And so that when they get to the top, they're pretty much done with the outside stuff and then begin to start working inside. So in the location of the crane is a key element that has been a discussion on that, whether it's at the elevator towers or whether have even talked about potentially a notch into the building and then being able to go up, finish out, and then fill that last part in as they're walking and coming out of the building. So there has been some very creative thought to that, trying to be conscious of disruptions to the neighborhood.
Listen, thank you so much for coming and I appreciate it. Good luck to you on this. It's exciting.